Here's an environment I'm currently working on for my game. It's sort of a Victorian mansion with a bay window and some tacky wallpaper and some of this wooden paneling, wainscoting sort of thing. So in this video, I'm going to be going over how I make the textures for this environment. I'm going to make a subsequent video where I talk about creating the 3D model of the wainscoting here. And then a third video where I bring it into Unity and put it all together. So to begin with, let's look at the textures. I've drawn some textures on just some ordinary index cards. These are just sloppy, sketchy pen drawings. The game is going to have kind of a hand-drawn, sketchy look, and that's because I can make that sort of art relatively quickly. Alright, so I've scanned the drawings in, so I'm going to start off with the wallpaper. Just going to select it. To begin with, I'm going to rotate it so that it lines up better with the edges of the file, and it's not going to be perfect, but that's okay. Now we can crop just the part of the image that we want. One thing I always do with pen drawings that I scan in is I run a contrast enhancement to make sure that the lines are as dark as possible. If I turn off the preview, you can see what it was like before, so you can see it makes the lines a lot darker. So one thing I want to add is I want to make this wallpaper look kind of dingy and smudgy. So what I'm going to do is make a copy of the image. Alright, so on this version, I'm going to blur, make a motion blur downwards. And it's going to look sort of like the ink is kind of running. Let's blur it, actually, let's blur it some more with a Gaussian blur. Alright. So I may adjust that later, but right now we'll save it. Alright, next we're going to work on the wood. Same as before, we're going to try to line it up a little bit. Alright, also like before, we're going to do the same contrast enhancement. This is for the hardwood flooring. We can save it. Alright, we also have a kind of a wood grain texture, which I'm going to process the next. Alright, I've cropped it. Now I'm going to adjust the contrast. Okay, I'm actually going to take the contrast down some. I'm going to create a new object and make it sort of a wooden brown color. And we can layer the brown onto our wood texture. We'll try different. Yeah, so color burn is going to look pretty good. Looks kind of like wood. This is a watercolor here. I took one of those little watercolor kits that you get in kindergarten and just slapped a bunch of paint on a paper. When you're doing digital art, you often get just very plain, sterile images, so it's nice to have a little bit of organic texture to blend in on top of your texture maps. And what I'm going to do here is just crop out a square. Just for an example, let's see if we can apply this to the wood that we looked at earlier. So What if I copy this, put it on top of our wood grain texture? So resize it. Then we'll blend it so it's really subtle. Yeah, so you can see there's a lot more variation in color now. Alright, we have 2 more textures to go, but all I'm going to do with those for right now is simply adjust the contrast and, you know, line them up like I have done with the previous ones. So I'll just show you the finished product anyway. Here's a fancy wood panel is what it's going to be. And we also have a kind of a Baroque window here. One additional step that we need to do is for the graphics cards, texture maps in the video game needs to be a power of 2 as far as the dimensions go. So we're going to have to resize all of these to 1024 by 1024. And you can see they get all distorted, but we're going to stretch them back out when we get into the engine, so they will look like they're supposed to in the end. Alright, well that's all for right now. Next time I want to go into how I create a 3D model for this wainscoting panel in Blender.